Your final project this semester for Drawing 1 is going to be a piece based around the idea of conceptual art. What is conceptual art? But there can be a lot of things that can describe conceptual art. Conceptual art itself was actually a movement in art during the 1960s and 70s, and really, you can imagine there are still pieces today that are considered conceptual art. In conceptual art, ideas are more important than the finished work itself. So, you know, the concept or the meaning behind the piece is the central, most important thing about art. It's considered that the art of ideas, meaning the most important thing, not technique, not beauty, not any kind of other uh, those things we normally hear about art are not important. It's the idea that the beauty of art is actually in the ideas behind art. A lot of the imagery or objects surrounding conceptual art are created about what art is and what art can mean. Conceptual artists also reject the idea that art should be beautiful. It's something we typically think about, that art has to be beautiful or, like we said, technique. And conceptual artists wholesale reject that idea. In reality, it was a reaction against a increasingly commercialized art world, that art was being made to sell to rich people typically, um, and that they felt that art had kind of lost its soul, so they were trying to create artwork that could not be bought or sold, that it was all about the idea. um, and as the popularity of conceptual art grows, you'll see that they found ways to market and still sell conceptual art. This is sort of the piece that you can imagine sort of sparked a lot of the ideas behind conceptual art. This is Marcel Duchamp's Fountain, 1917. Any of you have ever been to SF MoMA, you will see this piece there. It's not always on display all the time, but it is usually on their second floor galleries. Um, Now, at first glance, I don't know if you guys can tell that this is a turned on its side male urinal. And this piece was obviously very controversial when it was first displayed, or actually was refused to be displayed. The story goes that there was a open, non-juried show happening in New York with this group that Marcel Duchamp was a part of. And they said they weren't going to decide what was good art or what was bad art. They were going to hang everything that came in. So Marcel Duchamp decided to submit this piece, and had it titled by a fake name, Armut. Right, you can see it there, Armut, 1917. And even though the group said that they would not reject any piece, they rejected this piece because they saw it as offensive. And today, people still find it offensive, right? How could this be considered art? And what Marcel Duchamp had to say about it, that art is in the idea. It's in when someone declares it's art, it becomes art, even though it's just a plain old urinal. And some could argue someone actually had to design and craft the original mold for this urinal, right? Um, and that's part of the idea behind conceptual art. It becomes less about how it was made or who made it, and more about the idea. Now, we're not going to go that far. You guys aren't going to be making urinals or anything that crazy. But it's just meant to be sort of a step away from how we normally, throughout this whole semester, have focused on technique first, right? Most of our projects had nothing to do with your ideas. They were more focused on what, how to do value, how to blend, how to make something look realistic. This time around, we're going to start with an idea, and you guys get to come up with whatever you want. We're going to still use our hatching and cross hatching technique that we just learned about in the last module. So these should be done in hatching and cross hatching, but you're going to come up with what you want to do or your subject matter based on your concept. So we're going to start this week, and it's going to be due finals week. So you are going to choose at random a set of opposites. You are going to have to look up the words. You'll see there's a little posting for this, using a dictionary thesaurus, other source, maybe poetry, popular culture. And you're going to come up with a description of at least 2 ideas that would demonstrate those opposite concepts. Think about the most obvious way first. That's usually the cliche idea. And then try to come up with something that isn't so obvious, right? So you're trying to step away from what people might first think of and try to come up with a way that someone might have to think about more deeply when they look at it. How can you demonstrate these concepts in an original way? That's what you're trying to think about. So you can think about them as original, innovative, personal, symbolic. Try to think about what a different way of doing it that you could think of. Here's some examples, like I mentioned, of opposites. You can pick one of these opposites, or you can pick opposites of your own. Brainstorm different possibilities of them. You're going to have to do 2 drawings. They can be about 9 by 12 each. So, if you cut your 18 by 24 Strathmore paper in half, you can do a drawing on each half of it. I've had students ask in the past if they could just do one big drawing with both of the opposites represented in one. I'm actually open to that too. So instead of dividing your paper in half and doing 2 9 by 12s, you could do one big giant drawing depicting those 2 opposites in one. It's up to you. As I said, the next couple modules are going to kind of deal with your ideas on this. Feel free to email or text me if you have more questions.